What's up again there, guys? Brian here, the Three Topics Gamer here to share with you my official review for the newly released Uncharted movie. Now, this movie was directed by Ruben Fletcher and stars Tom Holland, Mark Wahlberg, Sophia Ali, and Antonio Banderas. Now, this movie had been in production hell for God who knows how many years. And for the longest time, I thought that they would eventually just cancel it. But it's here now, and me being a not only PlayStation fan, but a serious fan of the Uncharted franchise, I originally wanted to avoid it. Once it was announced that Tom Holland had been cast to play the title character of Nathan Drake, I knew right off the bat that I wasn't probably going to like this film. I mean, I don't already like his performance as Spider-Boy to the point where I refuse to watch any of the recent films and any future films that he's in, so I was never going to go pay to see this. In fact, the only reason I ended up seeing this is because a friend of mine really wanted to know my opinion because he wasn't a fan of the franchise and really wanted to get my own personal take on it. So I thank him for paying for it because I think had I paid money to go see this, I think I would have been severely pissed off. Now, just to give you a quick rundown of what you can expect from this film's plot. Basically, it's not really an origin story, but it's kind of its own thing away from the games, but it then takes elements from the game and kind of retcons information that we know about Nathan Drake, but they're trying to find this treasure, and it's basically kind of like a serious watered down version of Indiana Jones or something like National Treasure, but not nearly as entertaining. Now, I'm just going to get the performances out of the way. I'm not a fan of Tom Holland. I'm not a fan of his performance as Spider-Boy, and yes, I will continue to call him Spider-Boy because I am not calling him Spider-Man, but he is not Nathan Drake. He is not this character at all. He more or less plays more of his performance in Spider-Boy than Nathan Drake. I mean, they can throw all the craps from the video game character, but he does not embody the character at all. But it's even worse for Mark Wahlberg, who's supposed to be Victor Sullivan, and I can tell you, he is not trying at all. These two are supposed to be the main leads, and they do not act at all anything like the characters from the games. Now, I will admit that they do actually have some on-screen chemistry, and I think that's the only thing that works. And so, if you can go into this film, if you're a fan like me, and you can accept that these guys are not really Drake and Sully, I think you'll be okay. Now, they add Chloe in here, so I was a little bit puzzled by that, but whatever. I think Antonio Banderas as the main villain does a serviceable job because, I mean, let's be real. I don't think any of the Uncharted have had truly amazing villains, so I think what they do with Antonio Banderas is good, but he kind of gets thrown to the side once you get to the third act. I think that some of the visuals of this film look a little too clean, and there's just way too much blue screen or green screen or whatever they're using. So a lot of this film looks too artificial and fake. Now, they even go out of the way to take a number of action set pieces from the games and just start making me question why would you do that. And that's why I think it kind of retcons a lot of things that happened in the games because it makes the same mistake that a lot of video game movies like this do. In terms of they feel like if we just take a specific scene, a recognizable scene from the games, and shoehorn it into our film, that'll make it authentic to actually saying, oh no, we're making it just like the games, or being respectful to the games. When I don't think that is the case at all. I think the only reason that this film was ever even made to begin with was for one reason. It was to basically take advantage of Tom Holland's current popularity as Spider-Boy. So the fact that they would make this entire film and make it pretty much a sacrificial experimental project for the sake of one actor makes me feel very disrespected. I mean, they even go to the trouble of adding Nolan North in this game as putting him in as a cameo, and I have to wonder, did he take this cameo because he really thought this would be good, or did Sony actually ask him to be in here in order to give it like a stamp of approval so that the fans of the franchise would try to accept it, because it didn't work. Now, there were a number of action set pieces I thought were way over the top. However, I think that there's one at the end I think that kind of is the most entertaining because it involves having these two ships being carried by helicopters, and I'm like, if this film had been over the top like this the entire film, I think I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. Because what it comes down to is this. My biggest fear moving forward is if this thing becomes a franchise, it's going to ostensibly do the same thing that the Resident Evil films did, where they'll take elements from the games and just shoehorn them in without any real context and try to make its own thing. And what's worse is that since the Uncharted franchise has been effectively dead for a number of years, and I don't think they're going to make any games, if this does eventually turn to a franchise, my biggest fear is that when people think of the name Uncharted, they're going to think of these movies and not the games. Because, heck, the reason that the Resident Evil franchise was able to avoid this is because they were still making games while these movies were coming out. But since we're not going to have any more future Uncharted games as far as I know, that's my biggest fear, which is why I really hope that this doesn't turn to a franchise. Now, I will openly admit that the Uncharted movie is not a steaming pile of crap. It's not the worst video game movie I've ever seen, but it's certainly not a good one at all. It kind of feels somewhat mediocre on the levels of other movies like the last Tomb Raider movie, or so many others where it's not entirely awful. You can tell that they spent a lot of money because apparently the budget for this film was like $120 million, which is nuts. But it's really not worth it. I think there are two types of people that are going to go into this. I think that if you're a fan of it, if you're a fan like me, if you can't separate this from the games, you're not going to have a very good time. But if you can, you might find some enjoyment. But I think that people that are going to have a fun time with this are people who aren't fans of the Uncharted franchise and all and have no idea that this is even a video game franchise at all. I think if you go in not being a fan, you're practically guaranteed to have a much better time. Because this is just kind of like a dumb adventure film with a bunch of action set pieces that look entirely fake, with performances from characters that embody nothing from the video games. So it's clear that Sony wants to create their own version of this character away from the games. Now, if they just come out and said that, I think I would have given it a little bit more respect. But the fact that they were saying that, oh no, this is like a younger version of that character from the games, who I don't see Tom Holland becoming a mass murderer. I don't see this. Trust me, I don't see this version becoming that version at all. It's just very distracting and annoying, and it's probably a film that I just feel like I've just kind of wasted my time. And again, I didn't have to pay for this. If I had paid for this, I'd probably be more pissed off. So overall, this film is just kind of mediocre. It just kind of exists. If you don't want to see this film, you're not missing anything. If you're curious, I would just suggest you kind of take your brain out and do everything in your power to kind of separate your feelings and opinions of the games away from this. If you can do that, then I think you'll have a much better time watching this film. But it's certainly not something that I ended up enjoying by the end, and I just kind of hope that this stops and this doesn't continue on. Otherwise, I think worse things are going to be in store for us for the future. So if I had to give the Uncharted movie a rating, I'll give it like a C minus. I'm not even trying to be nice. It's just like it's not off. It's not the worst thing ever, but I would not even consider it to be a good movie at all. So those are my thoughts on the Uncharted movie. Now, if you did happen to see this film or were forced to go see it in some sense, please share your thoughts with me and others in the comments down below. And like always, please, if you happen to enjoy this review, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep tracking me on my future videos for the rest of the year. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I will see you next time.